There is a moment, buried not in the pages of the traditional Gospels, but whispered through the enigmatic verses of the Gospel of Thomas, that unsettles almost everything we think we know about Jesus. A moment where the teacher turns to his disciples and utters a line so bold, so bewildering, that it almost sounds like a riddle meant to fracture the very idea of spiritual authority. A line that has been called too dangerous, too liberating, and too revealing of a truth humanity wasn't ready to hear. The line is simple: I am not your master. On the surface, it feels impossible. Why would Jesus, revered as teacher, savior, guide, deny being a master at all? Why would he reject the very identity history insists on giving him? And if he wasn't the master, then what was he pointing to? What was he teaching his followers to see that we, centuries later, have missed? Tonight, we open a door that few dare to approach. We step into the shadowed corridors of early Christian mysticism, where parables were codes, miracles were metaphors, and enlightenment wasn't granted from above, but awakened from within. This is not the Jesus of organized religion or Sunday sermons. This is the Jesus of hidden sayings, desert initiations, and inner revelation. A Jesus who challenges hierarchy, overturns dogma, and hands the key of spiritual authority, not to institutions, but to you. In this video, we'll explore why this forbidden line appears in the Gospel of Thomas, what it truly means, and why it was excluded from mainstream doctrine. We'll uncover the esoteric idea that Jesus wasn't positioning himself as a master to be worshipped, but as a mirror reflecting the dormant divinity within every seeker. We'll journey into the roots of early mystical Christianity, tracing how this radical idea threatened structures of power, and why its rediscovery today is shaking the foundations of spiritual identity. And most importantly, we'll explore what this message means for you, your consciousness, your awakening, your personal path toward truth. Take a breath. Let your mind soften, because what you're about to hear is not just history, it's initiation. To understand the weight of Jesus' mysterious statement, I am not your master, we must travel back to a time before Christianity was a single, unified religion, back to a world where dozens of Christian movements flourished side by side, each carrying its own flavor of spiritual insight. The Gospel of Thomas, where this line appears, emerges from this early landscape, likely written between the 1st and 2nd centuries, though scholars debate its exact origin. It is not a narrative gospel. There are no miracles, no crucifixion story, no resurrection scene. Instead, it presents 114 sayings, cryptic, poetic, sometimes shocking, attributed to Jesus. Think of it less as a biography and more as a book of riddles, a koan-like manual for inner awakening. This was a time when spiritual seekers across Egypt, Syria, and Judea were asking radical questions. Who are we? Why are we here? What is the nature of the divine within us? Some communities, later labeled Gnostic by their critics, believed that salvation wasn't bestowed from outside, but discovered through inner knowledge, or gnosis. In their view, Jesus was not an external savior, but a revealer, a guide pointing humanity back to its own forgotten light. In this context, his refusal to be called master becomes more than a provocative statement. It becomes a profound teaching on spiritual independence. But as the centuries unfolded, something changed. As Christianity began to institutionalize, unify, and codify its beliefs, certain texts were embraced, while others were marginalized. Councils formed, creeds were written, orthodoxy was defined, and the more mystical, introspective voices, including the Gospel of Thomas, faded into obscurity, surviving only in scattered fragments and whispers. Why? not necessarily because they were forbidden in the sinister sense, but because they pointed toward a form of spirituality that didn't rely on intermediaries. No priests, no hierarchy, no rigid doctrine. A path where the divine was not distant, but already within, waiting to be recognized. For emerging religious structures, this was both inspiring and disruptive. Imagine a movement trying to unify millions of believers under a common banner. A saying like, "I am not your master," cuts against the grain, challenging systems that rely on authority, obedience, and clear lines of spiritual command. So Thomas became one of the lost Gospels, not because its message lacked depth, but because its implications were too vast, too untamed, too empowering. Yet its survival, rediscovered in the sands of Nag Hammadi in 1945, seems almost poetic, as if the text waited for a world ready to revisit its message, a world in search of inner autonomy, questioning, awakening, a world like ours. Understanding this history is vital because it reveals that Jesus' controversial line was not a rejection of teaching, but a challenge to dependency, a reminder that enlightenment cannot be outsourced, a call for humanity to step into its own spiritual authority. Now that we've set the stage, we can begin to unravel the layers hidden within this one enigmatic statement. To truly understand the magnitude of Jesus saying, "I am not your master," we must step inside the mindset of a teacher who wasn't simply instructing his followers. He was dismantling the very idea of spiritual hierarchy. Most spiritual traditions throughout history present a familiar picture: a master at the top, disciples below, knowledge transmitted in a single direction. But in the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus flips the structure on its head. He doesn't elevate himself. He dissolves the ladder entirely. In saying, "I am not your master," he is not denying his role as a guide. He is challenging the perception that enlightenment comes from outside, that one person's divinity is greater than another's. He is redirecting the seeker's gaze from the figure in front of them to the awakening happening within them. It's a radical shift, from worship to recognition, from obedience to awareness. Imagine a lantern in a dark room. Most people gather around the lantern, believing it is the only source of light. They cling to it, idolize it, and fear what will happen if it goes out. But a true teacher points not to the lantern, but to the flame. He shows his followers that the flame is not unique to him, that it exists in them as well, waiting to be lit. This is the essence of Jesus' message in Thomas. Throughout the text, he repeatedly indicates that his purpose is to reveal what the seeker already contains. You have the light within you. Know yourself, and you will realize you are children of the living Father. If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. These lines echo like reminders of a truth humanity keeps forgetting, that the divine was never meant to be externalized. But why is this idea so difficult for people to accept? Because it demands responsibility, because it requires awakening, because true self-knowledge threatens the systems built on dependence. A master-centered structure gives people comfort. Someone else knows the path. Someone else has the answers. Someone else holds the key. But Jesus' teaching in Thomas strips all of that away. He is not offering a comforting religion. He is offering a mirror, polished with his words, in which disciples must confront their own nature. And that nature, according to Thomas, is profoundly sacred. This is where the saying becomes even more mysterious. Jesus doesn't just reject being their master. He follows the statement by telling them to drink from the bubbling spring that is flowing within them. Not his spring, theirs. It's an invitation disguised as a paradox. If you look to me as the source, you will never find your own. If you look within yourself, you will understand who I truly am. Because the moment you awaken the light within, you realize something astonishing. The teacher and the student are not separate forms. They share the same root. This is why the Gospel of Thomas emphasizes direct experience over doctrine. It promises that the kingdom is not a distant realm, but a state of consciousness available now, here, through inner vision. And so the line, "I am not your master," is not a denial. It is a test, a gateway, a turning point in every seeker's journey. It asks a question without asking it. Are you ready to stop seeking authority outside yourself? Are you ready to reclaim the divine inheritance you've been taught to surrender? For many, this idea is liberating. For others, it is unsettling. But for all, it points toward a deeper truth. You do not follow the master. You become what the master saw in you all along. If part 1 revealed the philosophical shift behind Jesus' statement, "I am not your master," then part 2 takes us deeper into the symbolic, psychological, and mystical layers hidden beneath the phrase. This is where the teachings in Thomas stop being abstract ideas and begin functioning like spiritual technology, coded instructions for awakening the inner self. To understand this, we must look at a pattern that emerges throughout the Gospel of Thomas. Jesus continually redirects attention away from himself as an external figure and toward an inner dimension that he suggests is more real than anything the eyes can see. Take, for example, the saying where he tells his disciples, "Split a piece of wood, and I am there. Lift a stone, and you will find me." On the surface, this sounds poetic, but Thomas is not promoting pantheism or metaphorical whimsy. What he's pointing toward is presence, consciousness, awareness itself. The I in this statement is not the physical man who walked the earth. It is the state of awakened being he embodied. This distinction is critical. When Jesus says, "I am not your master," he is, in a sense, saying, "Do not cling to my form, recognize my essence, then discover it within yourself." In the esoteric traditions of the Near East, the true master is not a person. It is a state of consciousness, a level of inner clarity so radiant that all illusions fall away. In this sense, the master is always within the seeker, waiting to be discovered. A teacher can point to it, but cannot replace it. This is why Thomas repeatedly uses imagery of vision, seeing, recognizing, perceiving, becoming aware. Awakening is not about belief. It is about sight. This brings us to one of the most misunderstood elements of ancient Christianity, the concept of the twin. According to some early traditions, Thomas, whose name means twin, was not Jesus' biological twin, but his spiritual one, a symbol of the awakened human who recognizes the divine image reflected back at them. In this interpretation, Thomas represents all seekers, all humans, every person who dares to see beyond the surface of their own identity. And so, when Jesus speaks to Thomas and says, "I am not your master," he is speaking to that twin within each of us, the part of us capable of mirroring his awareness. This line challenges the myth that Jesus wanted blind followers. It dismantles the misconception that he sought worship. Instead, it paints a picture of a guide who wants equals, individuals who rise into their own authority, not remain dependent on his. It also disrupts another common misconception, the idea that enlightenment is a gift granted only to a select few. In Thomas, Jesus suggests the opposite, that enlightenment is inherent, already present, but buried beneath layers of conditioning, fear, and forgetfulness. And this is where the teaching becomes a paradox, because to awaken, the seeker must follow the teacher. Yet the ultimate realization is to transcend the need for a teacher entirely. The Master shows the way not to himself, but beyond himself. This is the hidden meaning behind the saying. It's not a rejection of discipleship, it's the fulfillment of it. Not a refusal to guide, but a refusal to be idolized. Not a denial of his identity, but a deeper revelation of what that identity truly means. The Thomas tradition preserves something bold, the idea that Jesus saw humanity not as fallen, but as forgetful, not as helpless, but as unaware of its own brilliance. This shifts everything. It means the goal of the path is not to worship the Master, but to awaken the Master within. And this is why the line still unsettles people today. Because it asks the one question institutions cannot answer for you. Who are you beneath the layers of belief? Who were you before the world told you what you are? Who is the twin waiting to wake up within you? These teachings are not simply theological. They are psychological, existential, and transformative. And they lead us directly into the next phase of the journey. How to apply this wisdom in real, tangible, everyday life. So far, we've explored the historical, philosophical, and mystical significance behind Jesus's enigmatic statement, "I am not your master." But knowledge that stays in the mind is only half awakening. Thomas isn't meant to be studied like a textbook. It's meant to be lived. This section translates the esoteric into the practical, so you can begin embodying the inner mastery Jesus was pointing toward. 1. The practice of inner listening. The Gospel of Thomas repeatedly points the seeker inward, to the spring that flows within, to the light hidden in one's own depths. The first practical step is learning to listen inwardly, not to the mental noise, but to the quiet intelligence beneath it. Try this. Sit in silence for 5 minutes. Instead of focusing on your thoughts, place your attention behind them, as if you are listening not to the sound, but to the space where sound appears. Notice what arises: clarity, intuition, insight, a subtle sense of presence. This is the beginning of hearing the teacher within. The inner knowing that Thomas says is the true source of wisdom. It doesn't speak in words, it speaks in recognition. 2. Reclaiming inner authority. One of the most powerful implications of "I am not your master" is the invitation to stop outsourcing your spiritual authority. This doesn't mean rejecting teachers, books, or traditions. It means no longer allowing them to overwrite the truth that resonates within your own being. A simple exercise. When you encounter a spiritual idea, whether from scripture, a video, or a conversation, don't ask, "Is this right?" Instead ask, "Does this awaken something in me? Does it ring true?" This subtle shift transforms you from a follower into an active participant in your own awakening. 3. The mirror exercise. Jesus' teaching in Thomas suggests that the divine image reflected in the teacher is the same image hidden within the seeker. To access this realization, you must learn to see beyond the surface of yourself. Each morning, look into a mirror, not at your face, but into your eyes. Hold your gaze, breathe slowly, then ask quietly, who is looking? Who am I beneath roles, labels, and memories? If you do this consistently, you'll begin to sense the profound stillness, the awareness that Jesus spoke from, the same awareness that lives in you. This is not imagination, it's recognition. 4. Dissolving the master-follower dynamic. In everyday life, people unconsciously place others above themselves. Gurus, leaders, influencers, even friends. This creates subtle spiritual dependence, the very thing Jesus warns against in Thomas. To transcend it, notice when you give someone power over your emotions, decisions, or self-worth. Pause. Ask, am I giving away my inner authority? Reclaiming this power doesn't make you defiant, it makes you whole. 5. The kingdom within. Daily activation. Thomas emphasizes that the kingdom is not in the sky or across the sea. It is within and around you. But how do you feel that in daily life? Try this simple grounding ritual. Place your hand on your heart. Take 3 slow breaths. Whisper internally, here, now, aware. Do this several times throughout the day when you're stressed, bored, overwhelmed, or disconnected. Each repetition shifts your awareness from autopilot to presence, from fragmentation to unity. This is how the kingdom becomes experiential rather than theoretical. Where this all leads. When you practice these techniques consistently, you begin to understand why Jesus refused the title of Master. Because the moment you access your inner awareness, even for a flicker of a moment, you realize you were never meant to remain a disciple. You were meant to awaken the teacher within. We've journeyed through ancient sands, decoded hidden sayings, and traced a path that leads not outward, but inward, into the heart of Jesus' most unsettling and liberating statement. I am not your master. Now, at the end of this exploration, something becomes clear. That line was never meant to diminish Jesus' role. It was meant to elevate yours. For centuries, humanity has been conditioned to believe that spiritual truth must come from an external authority. Priests, prophets, institutions, doctrines. But the Gospel of Thomas paints a different picture, a spirituality without intermediaries, where awakening is not handed down, but revealed from within. Jesus, in this mystical gospel, does not stand above humanity. He stands beside it. He shows that the light you seek is not exclusive to him, but inherent in you. He invites you to step out of the shadow of dependency and into the radiance of recognition. This teaching may challenge tradition, but it awakens something deeper, an ancient memory, a quiet knowing that you were never meant to be small. You were never meant to worship your own potential from a distance. You were meant to embody it. The forbidden line was not a rejection of discipleship. It was the final step of it, the moment when the student stops bowing and starts becoming. Now the question is no longer who Jesus was. The question is who you are when you remove every borrowed belief, every inherited fear, every layer that keeps you from seeing the twin, the luminous being waiting beneath your name. As you walk away from this video, let this question echo within you. What would my life look like if I trusted the light within me as deeply as ancient seekers trusted their master? Reflect on it. Sit with it. Let it transform you. If this journey stirred something inside you, an insight, a question, a spark, share it in the comments. And if you want more explorations like this, mysteries that challenge the boundaries of history, spirituality, and self, be sure to subscribe, because we're only just beginning. Your awakening is not a future event. It's a return to what you've always been, and the real master has been within you all along.